Hello, Karina Molloy. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this on a Sunday. Thank you very much. So, Karina, I had read your book, Women in Defence, which is sort of a history maker in terms of how I would view it. You're one of the first women to be recruited to the Irish Defence Forces. You served over 30 years in the army there as well. And I think at the time of writing the book, you were the most deployed woman sort of overseas as well. You were the first female to get promoted to a sort of senior non-commissioned officer rank in the army. And you were also the first female, I believe, to try out for the Irish Army Ranger Wing, which I never knew about until I had read the book. So that's effectively like the special forces, of the Irish Army there. So you had quite the career, but unfortunately, your career was plagued by bouts of sort of sexual harassment and assaults, unfortunately. So hopefully we can sort of talk a bit about your life and how some of that unfolded, what kind of impact it's had, and what you would like to sort of see change, with regards to safe practicing within sort of forces, whether it be in Ireland or sort of other workplaces and throughout the world.
Yeah, that sums me up. All right, thanks very much.
Yeah, no worries. I think probably for
having me on every minute of it. Well, not every minute, but it offered me a fantastic life and fantastic opportunity to, as the cliche says, to travel the world. And unfortunately, it was just marred by a few incidents that, unfortunately, when it happens to everyone, it has a long lasting effect. And I'm still struggling with the effects, even though I've actually retired now almost 12 years. But I would still be very loyal to the Irish Defence Forces because they are now trying their best to deal with what women and men have put up with throughout their careers. But they are making advances, which is great. But it's just taken a long time and a lot of courageous men and women to speak up to get them to listen.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely try and touch on to get into a lot of that, Karina. I think for this story specifically, though, it would probably be good to go back right to the start, and we'll just try and kind of follow it in as much sort of in as much chronological order as we can. So you grew up in oh God, I've forgotten. Donegal. You're from Donegal, Karina. Is that right? So, and I think the book sort of touches upon maybe that some of your family would have liked you to went into like medicine or like a nursing career, but you were always destined for a more adventurous life, shall we say?
Yes. As the Irish Defence Forces once had an advertisement saying, join the army and have a life less ordinary, and that's exactly what I want. Well, initially I wanted to be a PE teacher. So going back to the very beginning, I lived in a small village in Ardra, County Donegal, right beside the sea. So we learned to swim before we could walk. My father is big into surfing and made his own wetsuits. So we were all surfing as kids, where other kids were out playing and doing the local GA competitions and hurling and GA football. But we were the strange kids living beside the river and surfing and learning judo, of all things. So the military was very prevalent in my life. Both grandfathers, one Irish and one English, joined their respective armies in their countries. And then my brother spent 4 years in it. And then he got very bored and he went and joined the French Foreign Legion. So, but before he left, I think he left in late 1980. He resigned, and the Irish government decided to advertise for females to join the Irish army. So before my brother left, he advised me, "Oh no, Karina, do not join the army because you're looking for excitement, and the Irish army won't give it to you because you'll be very bored and you will be put behind a desk and you won't be allowed to do X, Y, and Z." And so he was dead against me joining the army, as was my mother, because I was a tomboy already. I was a tomboy, and she did at an organization where there was all men, but and she was afraid of me. Maybe she had great foresight, but of course I didn't listen to my brother. I didn't listen to my mother because I was very stubborn, and I said, no, I'm applying for this. Yeah, my brother was right. For the first, there was 38 of us were the chosen 38, and we got in and we did all the interviews and the medicals and the normal things, and then we started basic training. And from day one, we realized we were going to be treated different. But actually, I left out a very, very important point there. The Irish government advertised, come join the Irish Women's Service Corps, like in Britain and Scotland. So the advertising we asked to join was the Irish Women's Service Corps. So that's what we joined, and that's where we signed the dotted line. But within 6 weeks of our basic training in the Curragh camp in County Kildare in Ireland, we were brought in for this lecture, this meeting, and our platoon officer, she was one of the first 4 females in the Irish Defence Forces who joined just about 18 months before us, and they actually trained in England because they didn't have the facilities for them in the Irish Army. So they trained in England, two in Sandhurst actually, and another 2 did basic recruit training in England somewhere where you guys do your basic training. So we were brought in and we were told Women's Service Corps are now being disbanded. So, but you can stay in the army, but you'll just be a regular soldier, and do you want to stay or not? So we had the option to walk away, but none of us knew any different as far as we were concerned. The army is the army. But on hindsight, it made a great difference, because if we had stayed an actual corps, we would have gone up the ranks very, very quickly, and the female officers would have become generals very quickly, because us going in as privates, we would have had to be trained as NCOs regularly to train the next batch of recruits, female recruits that came in. So obviously the higher echelon in the Irish Defence Forces realised, oh my God, these girls are going to go through the ranks too quickly, and there's going to be jealousy and everything else. So anyway, so Corps was disbanded, and so then we beat against our fellow male soldier when we got into our units or courses. So that was the introduction. We realised we were different straight away, and our uniforms, of course, we had skirts and different trousers. Our boots took a long time to be perfected, because as you can imagine, the minimum height requirement when we joined was 4'11". It's very, very small, very tiny feet. And so a lot of girls struggled to get boots and basic equipment to fit them. But as years went by, that was sorted. Sort of rambling now. But
No, you're all right. I think one of the things that came up in the book that was mentioned quite a lot, I thought, Karina, was the non-combatant nature. So did you sign up as non-combatants, or did that happen like when they disbanded your unit? Were the goalposts moved effectively?
Yes. We were, yes, that's a very important thing that I forgot. Yeah, we were always, when we signed the dotted line, we were always going to be non-combatant. The advertisements said that we would become radio operators, drivers, signal personnel, hairdressers, which never happened, clerks, and grooms, because the Irish Army have a great equitation school, or aviation school, and so we were always initially non-combatant. We always knew we were non-combatant, but as I said, we weren't that well educated. We didn't realise what that difference would be until much later. The only big plus about being non-combatant, which was a great irk to our men, and looking back now, I can perfectly understand it, because when we're not do duties, we didn't do military duties. So therefore, that meant, unlike the men who are on duty every weekend, every second weekend, or during the day, the Irish Army still do 24-hour duties. I think we're one of the only armies in the world that still do that. And so we had every weekend up, but we didn't realise the significance of that when we joined. But it was soon pointed out to us by our male colleagues who found it very jealous and very hard to cope with. And but again, we didn't come in demanding that. We knew that. So when that combatant aspect of it changed, but it took 12 years to change. So we were in the army for 12 years, having every weekend off, getting constantly harassed by the men, so getting away with everything. And then when it all changed, I said, okay, this is great, it's all changing. Now we'll get respect. But no, it didn't bring us the respect, that I had hoped for, when you could see that we were working on par on the same level. But also the significance for the females, where we joined in 1981. So we were the first batch of females to come in 1981. And it took exactly years for the next females to come in. So that was a lot of isolation and a lot of pressure, and isolation to be the only 38 females in, and at that time the army was well over 15,000 men. But we weren't, and the problem was also the 38 of us, we were scattered. So some barracks, it's like for me, I was the only female in army headquarters for 10 years, apart from the odd female officer. And that led to its own problems. was having, facilities where to change, where to go to the toilet, things that you would automatically think, oh, that's all sorted. But no, it wasn't. And it took a long time for the Irish Army to catch up on those minor.
What was the background to?
Everything else.
Sorry, there's a wee bit of lag there, Karina. So I've jumped over you there. What was the background to them changing? Was it a law effectively, or just changing policy to recruit women? Do you think it was sort of political pressure because maybe other militaries were already doing it and they just were they were just unprepared to sort of change their ways? They just didn't want women in the army like the old guard.
Yeah, they were just it's the change of. Oh yeah, they were just unprepared. It was political pressure initially to bring in females because we were the only European country at that time without females in the Defence Force. So therefore, yeah, and I think it was all very, very rushed. Now we got brand new buildings, brand new billets, and everything was the best of best, and where it was renovated to an extremely high standard. But they still had, fast forwarded. Well, how are we going to deal with these women, and what exactly are they going to learn in training? And actually, a very good point, because this is going to be coming out of Scotland. The Irish Army did actually do something very advanced compared to our recruit training in 1981, whereas the British Army didn't allow females to do weapons training, I think, until 1990. So we were advanced in some ways, but very, very primitive in other ways. And there was nothing in military law to deal with harassment or, God forbid, rape or assault or anything like that in writing until 1992. So we were in limbo from 81 to 1992. We had no regulations to quote, well, this is what happened to me under section blah, blah, blah. But so when we went to complain, they were just shaking their heads. Well, how can we investigate this when there's nothing in writing to say under what section we can investigate? So again, the Irish Army were much more advanced compared to the way the British or other European countries treated their females as far as training is concerned.
I know that's an interesting point. There was something specific I was going to ask you about the training as well. But maybe just before I do get to that, there was a story about, I think you were in the Eastern Command, but I think there was a story about the Western Command, what they had to do because of a bit of, maybe political pressure. I thought that was quite interesting, if you can mention that.
Oh, yes. That was very interesting. So technically, I signed the dotted line on the 15th of June, 1981. But as you stated, having read my book, I joined in the Eastern Brigade, the Eastern Command, but 10 girls joined in the Western Command. Ireland was divided north, south, east, and west. And the current, the east, west, and south. So the girls in the Western Command all got phone calls to come into the barracks and sign on the dotted line on the 5th of June. So technically they joined 10 days before us, because a very clever, the recruiting officer overheard a conversation with two, you call them MPs, we call them TDs in Ireland, members of Parliament. And they said that the government have decided to withdraw the female recruitment to later in the year, because, as you said, the government's not ready. We have nothing in place. We're not ready. So this officer pulled a really good stunt and got the females to sign on the dotted line 10 days in advance, so that they can renege on their promise to bring in females, because once they signed on the dotted line, they were members of the Defence Force, and they couldn't be fired or they couldn't be discharged. So they were there on the payroll. So that saved us. That was really clever, and saved us, which was great. Because otherwise it would have been another 12 years, I'd say, before females got in, and I would have been too old then.
No, that was definitely a stroke of genius, maybe, for the recruiting officer there to outsmart the TDs, as you call them. So you mentioned the weapons training, and there's a bit about when you get trained to throw your first grenade. So I was going to ask you, what was that like? And then also, just on the order, did they train you how to throw a grenade before you were shooting the guns, or had that come prior? I just thought it would be interesting to ask that.
Oh, great adversity to calling them guns. The woman that helps me write my book, she says, why can't I call it a gun? I said, no, we can't call it a gun. It's either a rifle or a pistol. So, we did weapons training first. We learned to fire .22 small arms, .22 first in an indoor range. And then we went outside then to fire the FN 5.56, which has a bit of a kick. Or sorry, 7.62. The FN is 7.62. And then the Irish Army changed to the Star, which is 5.56, but that was much later in my career. And then in the middle of between learning to fire the FN and fire the GPMG, we learned to throw grenades. Yeah, so we did it. There's a sequence that that each recruit goes down between the FN and the GPMG, which was great fun to fire. We learned to actually throw live grenades like any other male recruit in any other army in Europe would learn. Yeah.
And like, how were you feeling like when you got to that point of like you're going to fire a grenade? Because I think it's obviously dangerous, right? So what was the nerves like when that came around?
Do you know what? Yeah, do you know what? Well, since having left the army, and the one thing that I really, really admire the Irish, I don't know what any other army is like. The instructors in the Irish Defence Forces are absolutely brilliant. Their methods are fantastic. They do a lot of preparation, and touch wood, there has never been an incident in throwing grenades, because their safety precautions, the amount of time you throw. You're not handed away, you throw dummy grenades, and you go through the process, all of the different stages with your dummy grenade. So there's bar dropping a grenade through fear. You're not going to have an accident. And bar hesitating, like one of our girls did, broke down in tears when she pulled the pin and said, "No, I can't do it. And I said, "Throw the pin, throw it." but you're in a pit and you're very, very safe. Yeah, no, as I say, the instructors, the method of instruction in the Defence Forces is beyond compare. It's really, really very high standards. So no, I had no fear whatsoever. And you couldn't stop me. Let me get in first. Oh, I only got to throw two. Can I throw another one? I was just yeah. That's why I joined the army. That's what being a soldier is all about, you know.
Aye, no, fair play. There was another story which was, I've not taken too many notes on it, so hopefully you can remember specifics, but I think it was like more of an amusing story. When one of the inspectors came round, like they obviously have to inspect your equipment and your kit and all that sort of stuff. Can you remember that from the early days?
Oh, yes. Oh, this is a big deal, and this was only because we were the first female recruits. Like no other male recruit ever had this privilege of a brigadier general coming down to inspect our kit at the end of our training. At the end of our training, there's three prizes up for grabs. There's the best soldier, there's the best shot, and the person with the best kit. And so as you can imagine, everyone in the army is issued kits, and it's, and you take care of it as best you can during training. And this is for male soldiers as well. Each part of your kit, you write your army number and your surname. But of course, women being women, we embroidered. We got in our name tags printed, and we embroidered and meticulously sewed each thing onto the back of our shirt, onto the back of our tunic, and all of this. So what's known then was a kit inspection. And so we had the privilege of a brigadier general, the top brigadier general in the army for kit. So he was a quartermaster general, and he came down to inspect our kit. So upstairs there was five rooms in our block, and he went upstairs first, and we just heard a roar. We had one girl who played for Ireland, played one of our national games called hurling, but for the women it's called camogie. But you still have every some weekends off to play games, and was for her county. But for the inspection, your locker would have to be open, and all your kit would be hung according to height, and your boots would be laid perfectly. And then the left hand side was for uniforms, and the right hand side was for civilian attire. So on the right hand side of her locker, her sticks weren't standing to attention. They were lying on the ground, and he said, "Oh, I see." And actually, she had the same surname as me. "Oh, I see you, Karina Molloy. You play camogie, and did you fire them from here?" Because they weren't standing up straight; they had fallen down. So he wasn't impressed with her camogie sticks not standing to attention. And so that was one funny incident. And then the next one then happened in my room. A fellow Donegal girl. We had what's all a civilian would recognize. I a poncho. So it's a big, massive plastic thing, but in the army, it's made of PVC, so it's just quite heavy. So and it had a hood, and you'd wear it when you're out on, trucking up the mountains when it was pouring rain. It would keep you dry. But the beauty of it was, because it was a poncho, it would also, you could wear your pack underneath and all your gear would still stay dry. So at the end, and it would fit underneath your pack, and you'd roll it up and tie it underneath the pack. So during a kit inspection, it would be unhooked from the pack and laid, still rolled up and just laid on top of the kit box. But never in any of our rehearsals of kit inspections, never were we asked to unroll it and hold it up. And so, but this general decided to ask my colleague from Donegal, this, can you unhook your poncho and tie it up and show it to me? And then I realized, as I was watching this, she was number 2 in the room and I was number 7. And the sweat started pouring down my back. So, my God, I haven't washed my poncho. Oh my God, it's going to be filthy dirty. And yet, it's in the army, manky. And he said, what's this? And he pointed to Muck. And said, what could she do? She just came very smartly up to attention and in her best Donegal accent said, that would be Muck, sir. And the one thing that I've learned with the comparing men and women are very honest. And what could she do? She couldn't say, oh, I don't know what that is, or what do you think, or whatever. She said, honestly, it was Muck. But men would lie their way through. So this poor general, who'd probably been in the army 40 years, was absolutely stunned at her honesty and just dropped it and walked away and shook his head. But our female platoon officer had different words to say afterwards, and our platoon sergeant just wasn't happy. But so there was funny parts in our training.
Yeah, and I think you progressed from the training. Your next sort of significant part of your army life would have been, as I understand it from reading the book, is going for like the non-commissioned officer training. Would that be fair to say? That was the sort of next sort of significant period for you?
Yes. Yeah. But when we finished recruit training, we were all dispatched to our units, and then my dream to become. And within 8 months of finished training, I was successful in doing that course. Myself and 3 other girls were selected, but unfortunately, we were sent back to our offices. After that, we weren't allowed to train any men, because you still have to remember there was no other women. We were still very, very career path then. For a recruit, you go in as a recruit CO's course. It's called a non-commissioned officers course to become a corporal. So that's quite a competitive course to get on. And so myself and 4 other 3, I was competing for 2 places actually no, the places weren't confined. So there was 4 applied to do the course, and thankfully I passed the preliminaries with a few personal problems, but or I wouldn't say personal problems, a personality clash with a particular female officer that said that I wasn't NCO standard or wasn't NCO material, and that she wouldn't recommend me for the course. But luckily, an NCO that actually was part of my recruit training, and he's the material, and I disagree. So I got honors. So 2 of the other girls that did the prelim course with me, they decided not to attend course. They chickened out, and so on the morning of the start course, myself and 1 other girls from the Eastern Command, we started. So the course had 55 men and 2 women. So but I have to emphasize that the Eastern Command, for some strange reason, Eastern Command, compared to the South, to the Curragh and to the Western Command, they embrace having females in their command. They embrace the historical significance, and they looked after them and did their best. They didn't bend over backwards for them, but in the Eastern Command were full of the most highest male chauvinistic pigs that I've ever met. They just couldn't cope with having women there. And God forbid that you are better than them, and then you're seriously in trouble. They just didn't embrace, again, as I said, historical significance of having females. So the NCO's course, again, 55 men, 2 women. You think that they would put us together? No, they separated us. And not only did they separate us in 2 platoons, when they separated 2 platoons, then each platoon, because of the facilities and the training, we had reverse time timetables. So we didn't see each other from the first parade in the morning to last night when we were getting changed in our own village. So it was very, very isolated. And then each platoon was divided into 4 different sections. So each section then had 10 men. And section number 3, unfortunately, I never had section number 3. There was 1 woman and 9 men. So the 9 men they just shook their heads and they said, "Oh my God, we have women in our section. We're going to get," as the army called it, "we're going to get creased." Every nasty detail thing that had to be done outside hours, it was number 3 section, number 2 section, number 2 section, because they were there just to get rid of me, because and Margaret, we caused a lot of logistical problems, like, for showers, for changing. And when we went on the ground, we caused even more problems. So they did their best to absolutely destroy our mentality and our morale and our stubbornness. And so poor Margaret lasted until Friday morning, and she came in. We changed the same village, and she came in. She started crying. I said, "What's wrong?" "Well, I have to leave. I can't do it. I can't do it." And then I started crying. "No, Jesus, don't leave me. You can't leave me. Please don't leave me to be the only woman on this course. I just can't do it by myself." But no, she was gone by 12 o'clock. She said, "No, can't do it. Gone." So that left. And again, as I said, the mentality of the East was just incredible. So she left at 12 o'clock. We were in opposite lectures. And then at 3 o'clock, I was pulled out of my lecture, marched over, stood to attention in front of my commander of the whole course, my platoon commander, the company sergeant of the school, my platoon sergeant standing behind me, stood me to attention. And he said, my platoon, the commanding officer of the unit, said, "Your colleague has left. So far, you've done nothing wrong. Stick around and see how long you last. Now get out. To the day I die, you'll never forget. Now just get out." And I was marched down the stairs, and I was saying, why did he bother doing that? And then I realized it was a form of intimidation and a form of making me more harassed. But what he didn't realize was that I grew up very stubborn. And as I was being marched down the stairs, I said, we had an end date. We'll say, I can't really remember the exact date. We'll say 12th of May. We started in January. 12th of May was in my head. And I said, right, come hell or high water, I have to be wheeled on to that parade ground, but I will be there on the 12th of May. You have just put a red rag in front of all here. And I just my head down. And that was the start of my 5 months being the only female on an NCO course.
But when the NC course was, you mentioned I think you would call them, I don't know if it's captains or whatever it's mentioned in the book, officers maybe. Is it Officer Williams? I think she was like a particular thorn in your side. Was she part of that NCO course, or was it prior to that you had these like negative interactions with Officer Williams specifically?
Yes. Officer Williams, thank God, was involved in the potential NCO's course. She was the head of the prelim course, where you had to pass before you got on the end. So why? She just took an instant dislike to me. Now, I could reveal her identity by saying where she was from, but I won't, because there was very few female officers at that time, and I don't want a lawsuit. But I just couldn't understand why she took an instant dislike to me. But female officers and of females against females, we just do take instant dislikes. But my and she unfortunately would follow me throughout my career, and I would have another run in with her later on in my career. But yeah, unfortunately, she just took an instant dislike. But I took great satisfaction when she passed all the other 3 females. Yes, they are NCO material, but Molloy isn't. But Molloy was the only one that passed the course, and her other 3 girls didn't. So that was my payback to her.
I know, that's a great point. That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah.
And did scratch happen? Was that part of the NC course, like the sort of physical demanding side of things, or did that happen elsewhere? It seemed like
The exercise called scratch is part of the NCO's course, where every soldier has to do. I'm sure there's versions of it in the British Army as well. It's during the 5 months course. I think you do all the academic stuff, you do all the square bashing, and because basically an NCO's course is to train you to become a corporal, to become a junior leader. So you have to learn how to instruct recruits on the squares. You have to learn to teach them how to march, how to salute. The second part of it would be on the ground, how to lead your troops on the ground. But before you start that aspect of it, you are brought down in Ireland, It's a place called the Glen of Mall. And the first morning at the Glen of Mall, or actually the first afternoon, you arrive you leave the barracks, Dublin barracks, really early in the morning. You sit on the back of the trucks with all your gear, and you're nervous, and then you jump off jump off the truck, told to get your gear, get your rifle, and start running. And that's where that's called the scratch exercise. It's basically sort of an obstacle course where you have to crawl on your belly through mud, to go through a course, and make sure your rifle stays working. And you're climbing over fences, climbing over walls, and you have a bridge, but you're not allowed to run over the bridge. Oh, no. You have to climb up the side of the bridge and go across the bridge, arm across arm over arm, and have your rifle and your pack slinging off your back, and then jump over at the edge. And the aim is not to fall into the water. And you do this lovely loop about 3 times. And so you do know at the end of it that it is going to finish, but you just don't know when it's going to finish. But you're hoping it's going to finish soon, because you're just tired, and there's people screaming at you and roaring at you out of the most weirdest places they would be standing. And I think the angle that you're getting at is a second wind, and I was crawling, and there was 2 men in front of me crawling, and I just wanted to get this crawling area over and done with. So I crawled past them, and my platoon officer was standing on the height above, and he called down to the men and said, "What are you doing, letting that fucking bitch pass you out? Get a move on." And as I said in the book, instead of saying, "Well done, Molloy," well done, there was just no well done. And it was just the sheer, I don't know. They just didn't want a female there. They just did everything to try and get rid of me. But I carried on, and I would say that probably incensed the men more than anything, because God loves them. We were all suffering. It's not everyone had their own problems and suffering, and their own injuries they were carrying. But that wasn't a very nice thing to roar at them or me. It wasn't very motivating for them either, I'm sure.
Yeah, did they no try and punish you as well? Did they no give you like a rifle or something to carry after that to try and slow you down?
Oh yeah, that was a different part of it. Part of becoming an NC junior leader is to teach you your map reading skills, to allow you to lead troops over the mountains. And but they obviously never read my personal file before I joined, because in my personal file, I actually before I joined the army, I had done a 2-year mountaineering course. So I was a qualified mountaineer. So me and a compass and a map, I was very comfortable. But so a particular morning, up over a mountain, and off I trotted. And but I didn't realize the whole aspect of a leader was not to go too fast and to leave your men behind. So, but because I was so used to mountaineering and I was so comfortable with a compass, I knew exactly where I was going. So off I trotted. But so when we had a break, so I had to stop. Well, a runner was sent up to tell me to slow down. So and then we had a break halfway up the mountain, and then when the break was over, I was told carry on and still continue to be lead. So I thought this was very strange to not give someone else a go, because I'd done my bit as far as I was concerned. I'd showed that I could map read. "No, Molloy, you're still leading." So I said, "Oh, okay." Then they said, "Yeah, and here, you carry this, that might slow you down." So what they gave me was the general purpose machine gun, which was a mere an extra 23 pounds to carry, along with my own pack and my own rifle. So I picked it up and slung it over my shoulder and carried on. But the tears were streaming down my face, because this was, I'm not going to let them beat me. And so I kept carrying GPMG until we got down to the bottom, got to our target location, and I just sat there. Yeah, here, this might slow you down. Isn't very nice.
I know, fair play. I think there's like a lot of accounts like that in the book, to be fair.
Still how they were dealing with that. My whole attitude to all of that was that they still don't realize what they were dealing with, that I was extremely stubborn. And not only was I stubborn, but what everyone has to realize is that if you want a career in the army, you have to pass this course. You're going to stay a private. The more they threw at me, the more I got more angry. And I said, "No, I want a career in the army. This is my life. I absolutely love being in the army. And I wanted to advance. And this was the first step that I needed to advance. And no matter what they threw at me, I came off the NCO's course. I lost two. I had a nasty rash on my face. Don't know where it came from, but no matter what they threw at me, I said, no, I'm passing this course. I'm getting a career, and that's it. And that was my mentality. And that was the mentality that kept me going throughout my entire career and all my promotion courses. No, you can beat me. You can stand on my head. You can jump up and down, but I'm still going to stand up and take a step forward.
No, that's interesting. And I think you've sort of,
that I loved.
I think you referenced this as well earlier, so I'll ask you this question. Like, now that you've been out the army for whatever it is, 10, 12 years,
Yes.
like, it seems like that phase, right, that specific phase that you went through there, Scratch, it's like a test to maybe break people, like, mentally and physically, or maybe push them beyond what they think their limits are. Like, what's your assessment of that now that you've left the army? Like, do you think that, like, armies are training soldiers well by doing that sort of, like, task in the way that they perform it, or do you think that it's ineffective? Because I've never been in the military, but in a civilian life, I don't think there's many companies that would put, barriers and test you to that extreme to get the best performance out of you. There would be sort of barriers erected occasionally, but not to that extent, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, no. Well, I agree to a certain extent, because in the military, the Air Force or the Navy, you are trained to obey orders without question, because ultimately the main aim of a soldier is to fight in battle and is to kill the enemy without hesitation and without question. There, you could be a little more not gentle, but a little more of a matter of fact and a better teaching technique. I don't think the American Army have the extreme method of we break you down to build you up into what we want. Now, the Irish Army, I don't think the British Army, they don't go to that extent, but I think there could be a little leeway. Yes, absolutely. And I think I got the brunt of it because of my gender and because of the isolation. I don't think once they started training females in the Irish Army, it was in what we call mixed platoons. It was men and women together. Then they laid off this individual female harassment. So to answer your question, yes, it is needed so that the soldier is trained to obey orders. But I think they overdone it in some aspects of the early days with the females. All right, yeah.
Aye, no, fair enough. And I think it was during the NCA course. And like I said before, Karina, if there's anything that comes up, we don't want to talk about it, if we can skip past it. But I think it was on the NCA course, unfortunately, where this was like, you'd experienced like discrimination before that, and like some sexism sort of behaviours. But I think this was like the first sexual assault, unfortunately, where this occurred within your sort of time there in the Defence Forces.
Yes, yeah. We were 6 weeks into the course, and again, the only female. So we did on a Wednesday afternoon, and at this part of the course, we were taken to the swimming pool to be taught to swim. Those guys that couldn't swim, they were taught to swim, which was a great part of the course to learn, because it's a valuable skill in life, is to learn to swim. But for those men and myself that could swim, the pool was roped off for two lanes. So with the people that could swim up and down the lanes, and the lanes were wide enough to share. So you'd swim in opposite directions up and down the lane. So I was sharing the lane with them. Now I who was an instructor on the course. He's a tall man, big man. He swam the crawl. So when I was swimming the breaststroke and we would meet, then inevitably, of course, we would pass each other in the pool in the lane. And the first time he passed me, his hand went down and brushed against my crotch. And I swam on, and I said, okay, the lane is very tight, so I'll give him that. That's okay. But when we turned and we met again, going the opposite direction, he grabbed on to my vagina this time and had a good what would you call it? Yeah, a good feel or whatever. So you like when this happens, your shock sets in very quickly and you just don't know what to do. So my immediate reaction was to get the fuck this man again. So I swam to the end of the pool and started to get out of the pool. And of course, my platoon sergeant let her roar at me and say, "Where are you going? The class isn't finished." So I got back into the pool, but I went under the rope and went to the other side to the guys that were learning to swim. So I sort of burst it up and I said, I'm not going to think about it. Just going to, I emphasized, I wanted to pass this course. I'm just going to let it slide, pardon the pun. But when I got changed and went back, I had a boyfriend at that time who was working in the barracks for that summer. And this was before texting and mobile phones and everything else. So I met him at lunchtime and he asked me what happened in the pool. Now, as I said, there was no texting, no phones. I said, so we went to the pool from 9 to 10 and then we got changed, went back to the barracks. And every barracks in the Irish Army at 11 o'clock, they have a coffee break. And so the coffee break and the NCOs go into what's known as the NCOs mess, which is a bar where they have coffee during the day. And at night, then it turns into a bar for the guys to go drinking. And this was full of men because, again, there was no female NCOs because I would have been one of the first. So this was full of men at 11 o'clock in the morning, approximately about 50 men, I'd say. And this particular NCO who had a good group announced it in front of everyone, said, "Oh, did you see the ass on Molloy? And I had a good group. And did you see the body on Molloy?" And words to that effect. But this was in front of everyone. And all these hurt me that none of these men, who all had mothers, I'm sure, sisters, wives, daughters, nieces, not one of them had the moral courage to stand up and say, "Oh, well, look, this, why are you saying," sort of defend me and all the other females in the defence force at that time. Say, it's hard enough for a female to be the only one on the course, and how dare you say, something like that? That's not fair, and she's not here to defend herself, and there's no woman here to stand up for her. So that happened during 11 o'clock, and without my knowledge, or how could I know? And so my boyfriend relayed all of this because one of his friends was there and heard everything. And he said, "You have to go and complain. You must go and complain now, because you have a long 4 months left and it's going to happen to you down the road. So you have to stand up to this and say, you're not tolerating any of this and we want it dealt with." And I said, okay. So in the army, they have a very difficult, you have to put in writing, you have to physically write, "Dear sir, I wish to have a private, interview, blah, blah, blah." So I did this. I went through the correct procedure so it couldn't be thrown out. And I said, I want a private interview with the unit commander, not the course commander, but the head of the actual school. And so I was taken that afternoon, I was taken out of class, marched across. And as I was marching across, my platoon sergeant said to me, going up the stairs, said, "Oh, so is this where you're finally going to leave us, Molloy? Are you finally giving up?" And I said to myself, I didn't answer that. I said, no, I said, I'd rather discuss it with the commandant when I get in. But little did I know that when I went in, expecting just me and the officer, I was met with 4 officers and the platoon sergeant standing behind me. And so the officer asked me, "What's this all about?" And I said, "Well, it's about what's happened and he said, and he cut me short. And he said, "If it's about what's happened in the pool this morning, then let me warn you that and he mentioned my boyfriend, Private Smith, let's say. Private Smith has assaulted that particular NCO. So if you go ahead with your claim, we will charge Private Smith. When you're charged with assault in any army, your career is finished. Your career is finished. You won't get promoted. You won't get overseas." So I wasn't going to do that to Paul. And so I said, "Right, okay, I won't take this complaint any further, but I'm never going to sue me again." And they said, "Okay, right, that's fine. We don't care." But after I seen Paul afterwards, and he never touched that NCO. He verbally cussed him, or I'd never physically touched him. But I had already said that I wasn't going to take any further. So I take it further. I just head down and got on. So that was my first instruction in how to complain harassment and assault within the Irish Defence Forces. And the worst thing was that instructor still stayed instructing in my platoon. Like the best thing, or to show some concern for my mental health, they could have swapped him out to put him in the other platoon, and I would never have had to deal with him again. But I still had to deal with him for the other 4 months. So that was very mentally. So, yeah, but he never touched me again, and we never had a one-on-one confrontation. Maybe he got scared as well, realized, oh, oh yeah, we better tread carefully here, because she is feisty enough to complain and brave enough to complain, and we'll leave her alone. So yeah, that was the first incident.
I know, fairly egregious behaviour, obviously, on the part of the assailant there. So, fair play to you, obviously, for going and complaining about it. It's just unfortunate that the sort of subsequent activity for the army, wasn't quite thorough enough, as you say. Hopefully, if something like that happened now, you'd like to think that somebody would be challenged on their behaviour, for boasting about doing something like that. It's just bizarre. I just can't understand it.
Yeah, it takes a certain mentality to boast about things like that. All right, yeah.
Hopefully we've moved on a wee bit in terms of behaviour like that would be challenged. I would like to think now. But anyway. So you passed your NCE course, so you were either the first or one of the first sort of NCOs in the army there. And then I think sort of some of the next sort of significant parts of your journey are then getting deployed abroad to Lebanon as a peacekeeper. Is that fair to say?
Yes. The next big step then was to get overseas, and my first one of 6 missions to Lebanon, and but yeah, it had its little incidents as well. The first one being Officer Williams. My heart just sank when I saw her on the list going overseas with me. And first day there, I forgot when I was walking past her, and she didn't appreciate that, so she tried to get me charged for not showing respect to an officer and not saluting her. But thankfully, I had a very good company sergeant, and he talked her out of that. But so we went on without any significant problems throughout the mission. The mission is 6 months long, so it was a summer mission from August. So and when you have a birthday overseas, they do try and make a big thing of it, your working colleagues, because you're away from home and everything else. So they always have a little office party or a few little drinks and in the billets, and treats and presents and a little cake. But when I came back off leave, my captain invited me up to the meal billet to my other male colleagues, because of course we only had myself, Officer Williams, and another girl, three of us among 800 men. And so I worked with all men, naturally enough. And so we went up to the billet after work, and the men had been drinking already before I arrived, and I was given a few little presents, and I opened them. But there was a few presents that I'd said, okay, I'll leave. I won't open until I go back to my own billet. But the captain that gave me a present said, no, open it now. And he seemed really concerned that I would open it in front of everyone. So I said, oh, okay. Wow, what's this going to be? I was expecting something. Didn't expect what I got, because what I got and what I opened was a pair of really sexy knickers. And written in the crotch was, oh, I wish I was here. And I really didn't know what to do with that. So I just smirked it off and smiled it off. And as you say, it was all to do with, this is all good banter. I love that army term, banter. And, but I was standing in front of men and my captain. He was old enough to be my father, and he was my boss. He was an officer, certainly not a gentleman. And just, as I said previous, you're just stunned. You just go into shock when this sort of thing happens to you, and you just have to brush it off, because I'm at a very, very young tent, the so-called bitch that complains about everything. You're not going to get very far, and no one will want to take you overseas. No one will want to go on a course with you. You're just going to get a reputation for complaining all the time, and I unfortunately already had that reputation. So I just didn't complain. I just said, oh, thanks very much, and just put it in my pocket and made a quick exit out of there very quickly, and just felt so frustrated. I went back to my billet and just started crying, and just, when is this ever going to stop? Are we ever going to get respect? It's just constant sniping and constant, oh yeah. So it's just hard to deal with.
No, completely understandable. I think as the sort of the title alludes to on the Kindle, an enemy within is kind of how you title it. It's an abuse of power, that as well. Because it is somebody senior, and it's just a pure abuse of power. That's part of it, unfortunately, for them.
Yes, yeah. The abuse of power is a very good expression, and it absolutely sums it up completely throughout my career. The abuse of power was just incredible. And they have this air about them that, well, I can do whatever I want, and you're not going to touch me. And the law, I am an exception to the law. And yeah, they unfortunately were, and they got away with it. But thankfully, as you said, it is changing.
No, good. I think one of the worst ones that was mentioned was like Officer X. Like that seemed to be the most like dangerous encounter I would have said.
Officer X.
Was that Lebanon as well, Karina?
Yes, it was actually Lebanon. Yeah, it was a few years later. It was in the early 90s. And so women had been in the army 10 years, 11 years now, because the female officers had joined a year before us. So women have been in the army almost 12 years at this stage. So I thought, okay, this trip is going to be, this mission is going to be a better one. And at this stage, I was an NCO for quite a while. And yeah, so when you go on a mission, we do a period, a time before you go overseas, before you leave the country, before we leave Ireland. We do what's known as a forming up period, and the whole unit gets together. And it's a great idea. You get all your admin sorted, your inoculations, your will, you have to make out a will, and you get to meet your working colleagues that you're going to be working with for 6 months. So it's a form up period. So in this forming up period, myself, throughout my entire career, I was in logistics, which I deliberately chose because you get a lot of trips overseas in that core, the logistics core. So I was still a junior NCO, still a corporal. So I had a sergeant, and then there was 4 quartermaster sergeants and a captain. So and 2 privates. So I was on the very junior rung of the ladder, and so this captain came that day and introduced himself, and we sat around. Senior NCOs went about doing what they had to do. So myself and the sergeant were in the office was the captain, because we would be working very close together. And so he started saying, "Oh, Molloy, you remind me of my mistress, not of my wife, not of my mistress, but you have brilliant ass, you have brilliant hips." And it was just horrendous. I couldn't believe that this man was saying these things loudly and boastfully, not a care in the world, as if he was, I don't know who he thought he was talking to. But he just said, "Oh yeah, we're going to have fun, Molloy. We are going to have fun. This is great. I'm going to have great fun with you. You look at the body on you." And it was just unnerving and just nasty. So when he finally left the room, or I went out to the sergeant and said, "Did you hear that?" And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. It's only a bit of banter. It's a lovely expression, only a bit of banter. He'll calm down when he gets overseas. He'll have real work to do. Don't worry about it. Just ignore him. But it's kind of hard to ignore. So when we got overseas, unfortunately, we shared an office, and the sergeant was there as well. So he was my witness to all of this. But at the end of the day, he didn't turn out to be a great witness. So the officer X continued with this banter, for the likes of saying, "Oh, you looked good in your civvies last night," and "Oh, you looked great in your bikini over the weekend," and continued. And this little, as they call it, banter. So I think week 9, I had enough, because it does wreck your head, because this is an officer, this is your boss, and I didn't want. I felt really uncomfortable working with him, very uncomfortable. There was inappropriate touching, his hand going around the small of my back or caressing the back of my neck, and it was just no. Only a boyfriend can touch those areas, and only the person that you're being intimate has the right to touch you there. And so again, as I said earlier on, you have to put in writing your complaint. So there's a thing, if you want to complain, called the chain of command. So in the chain of command, you must put in writing from the sergeant to the captain. And this is what I fought for through the Woman of Honour, to get this chain of command removed, because I had to write to have an interview with my captain, who was the person who was harassing me. But if I didn't sit down and tell him, then I couldn't go above above him. I couldn't break the chain of command. So I couldn't go above and go to my adjutant or my colonel until I told the cap what I was doing. But yet it was the captain who was the perpetrator. So it was just horrendous. So anyway, I had to go through and request an interview with him, private interview. And I explained to him that I didn't appreciate what he was saying, what he was doing, his touching, his remarks and everything else. And the man was back at me and he said, "Oh, okay, Molloy, I won't bother giving you any more compliments. If you don't want any compliments about your fantastic body or your tan or what you look like, then that's fine. Yeah, I'll stop give you compliments. And God, I'm really sorry if you take the compliment at the wrong way." And he was just very clever and reversed back at me. So as I walked out and closed the door, I said, "Wow, am I being too sensitive? Am I taking him up the wrong way?" But no, I seen the light of day very quickly. He did stop for maybe a week, 2 weeks, but he continued. And because I had already complained correctly through the chain of command, I went above him and complained to my adjutant. And his attitude, sir, not much experience dealing with army. My captain was quite a flamboyant guy and very well known and quite senior. It was maybe his 4th or 5th time overseas. So the adjutant was no good. He said, "No, not having any of this, not taking this on board. How dare you ruin this man's character. This is a very senior officer." And so I complained to the adjutant 3 times and he did absolutely nothing, and just say, "Can you just lay off Molloy?" And, not make a big deal of it, not grade him or anything, because he did have power to grade him because of his position. But he did nothing, did absolutely nothing. And so a week before we were due to come home, officer to knock on my door one evening and very drunk. And of course I opened the door because that's what you do in a mission area, because you just don't know what's going on. So I opened the door and he jumped on me and we landed on my bed, and he basically tried to sexually assault me. And he got halfway and I hesitated and I said, "No," I said, "I'm not going to beat this woman." And my only saving grace was that he left me, and I rolled onto the floor, onto the bed, ran across to the sergeant that I worked with, private that I worked with, and explained what had happened. And the sergeant's answer was, "You go back and make sure he's not walking around the camp drunk," because we were in the female nurses, and whereas the Irish men were in a different camp. He said, I don't want to see the captain walking around the Swedish nurses camp drunk. Did you go back, keep him in the room, and till we get dressed and come over and remove him." Now, needless to say, I didn't do that. I just stood outside and waited for the sergeant and the private to get dressed and come over with me and take him out of the room. But when I complained the next day, we're going home now, and we won't say anything more about it and just get on the plane and forget about it. The man committed a criminal assault, because I've been to our guards, our police in Ireland, and explained what happened, and they said, "No, that's a criminal assault. The army did not."
Yeah, again, just a dereliction of duty, it seems like there. Like for your comrades, unfortunately.
Yeah. No one wants to. When you were dealing with the kind of flamboyant, character, put your head down and you walk away, and that's exactly what my sergeant private did. They wanted nothing to do with it, and I was just left dangling in the wind by myself, and having to deal with it, in a mental capacity, and having to deal with it when you got home, because there was no offer whatsoever. And these incidents stay with you. Like, I had to go, and I had a lot of private counselling and help after I left the army, because when I was still in the army, you just burst it under the carpet and you just get on with, right, what's next in my career? What do I need to do to go up the ladder? Because as I keep saying, I really enjoyed my army career, loved it. And I just said, right, what's next? And just put it behind you. And as they said, get on a plane and get on with it and get about it.
Yeah. You mentioned the word flamboyancy there, though. Like, I think, if anything, that's what the Me Too sort of movement's maybe showing us. There's people who they get themselves into a position of high social status and power, and then they try and abuse that, and they use that power to protect themselves, unfortunately. So it takes people like you and some of your colleagues who have helped you to sort of raise their head above the parapet and say, "No, fuck this is behaviour's, morally repugnant, totally wrong. Like, it needs to be stamped out as quickly as possible, unfortunately, or there's going to be more victims and more people suffering, unfortunately."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, because when I did raise my head about Parliament through the Woman of Honour documentary, the first question that they asked me was, "Well, why didn't you leave?" Because all the other ladies that I was with, the Woman of Honour, they all left. after 9 years, after 13 years. But I stayed for 30 years and 287 days. But my answer was, and always will be, if you're not in the room, you can't change. If I leave, and if I'm a senior female, what's that going to show to the other junior females? And to the young girls and young female cadets coming in, well, she left, so she can't handle it. So, Jesus, what have I got to look forward to? So that was my attitude to stay in the room and to try and change it from within the room. But you're certainly not going to change it once you get out of the room or once you get out of the organisation, because you're gone then.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. You mentioned the Women of Honour stuff, so how significant was that for you, Karina, like getting involved with exposing this, I suppose, and when you started to see some of your comrades coming forward, with similar stories to yourself, what was that like?
Yeah, it was very, very important. I just want to clarify one thing before we go on talking about the Women of Honour. The Women of Honour group was set up when I was one of the original members, but I've actually since left the Women of Honour last year on the 6th of April through for personal reasons, and so for whatever I say now about the Women of Honour is purely my own opinion. And so the Women of Honour actually were and again, I always felt isolated, that because with other females, we just never talked about it to each other, and we just sort of put the head down. And even when we gathered in all female company, my platoon especially, the 38 of us, we always have an annual reunion. Never admit that, oh, this happened to me, that happened to me. So when this particular female officer that had retired rang me and asked me, oh, we're getting a group together, and we're trying to raise and make aware the awareness of what females have had to go through for the last 40 years in the Irish Defence Forces. We just want to make the public aware and to bring it forward and to try and do something, to make a change. Would you be interested in joining our group? So I said, oh my God, I was absolutely thrilled and delighted, and the sort of weight sort of lifted off my shoulders, the burden that I thought I was carrying alone, because I thought I was special and I was the only one that was getting harassed. And but then to talk to, I just couldn't believe it. Some of those girls were actually raped by their colleagues, and those rapists still stayed serving and were never charged and were never dealt with by the military. And so that sort of opened my eyes, because again, as I said, no one talked about it. So even though I was still serving when these rapes had happened, and it's not alleged rapes, it's actual rapes, and they just kept us so quiet. The Irish Army, or any army, are just so good at, as I call it, circling the wagons and protecting the officers, protect each other so well. So it was such a relief to be able to come together at this group of women, whose name we decided on, the Women of Honour, and relief to be among other victims, because that's what we were. We were victims, and we got to lean on each other, and it was such a nice atmosphere initially to be together with them. And then, so the highlight of the Women of Honour is a documentary. If your listeners are interested, they can Google Women of Honour RTE documentary, where some of us had the courage to go public and be named. Myself and another girl, Yvonne O'Rourke, we went public, and it was a radio documentary. So we went public and told our stories, what happened to us. Other members of the Women of Honour told their stories, but they wished to stay anonymous, which was fair enough. And open, and the government had to start listening to us. And so we got our first meeting with the Minister of Defence, and then it just went. It went nationwide then, and we had lots of meetings, and we had as I said, our 4 A's. I made our 4 A's, which were we demanded, when we met the minister, we had to have, well, what do we want from him? So we said we wanted an acknowledgement, a public apology, and action for change, and then accountability. The likes of, if a man was found guilty, then he was discharged. So we wanted accountability. So, and now last year, 2024, we the Women of Honour finally got what we always wanted, which now is statutory tribunal inquiry, and which will start. Well, it did start last year, but the people will start. We've all given in our evidence now, and now we're just waiting for the tribunal to start interviewing victims, which includes men as well, thankfully. And we have men and women now coming forward to telling, I won't say stories, because they're not stories, or they're not lullabies or nursery rhymes. They're hardcore, really horrific experiences that men and women have had to put up with in the Irish. I'm involved with the British Army side of things as well, the charity forward, and your army are also dealing with these the consequences and trying to make changes as well, which is great to see. The military Me Too movement in Canada, in America, New Zealand, Australia, we've all come together to emphasize what has happened, which is a great victory, really. And our biggest victory is we got our statutory tribunal to deal with this aftermath.
Aye, no, that's amazing. I wasn't aware of this sort of statutory trial was ongoing, so fair play. Hopefully that can make a difference. Like now that you're out, you're on the other side. Yeah. Do you, like, when you compare like what the army's like now to your time, like you were in the first cohort of women, obviously. And it doesn't need just to be in Ireland. I do appreciate, like as you're saying, this is going to be a global problem across all forces and all industries as well, not just be the military where this is happening. But obviously that's your background. That's what we're talking about here. But do you think that if somebody in Donegal was to sign up now, would they get a fair crack at the whip in terms of their ability to have a career that's no marred with discrimination and harassment and threats of sexual violence? Like, are they operating in a safe workplace environment, or there's still a wee bit more to do?
Oh, unfortunately, it has really improved, and the Irish Defence Forces have made great strides since the Women of Honour documentary, since it's out in the public domain, and they've realised now that they were just closing their eyes and their ears to the problems. But we, the Women of Honour, have made them face up to their problems, and there are certain laws. They have lots of educational lectures and everything else, but they it's still not. I mean, it will be an ongoing situation, which all armies all over the world have admitted to, that they can't click their fingers, and it's the lovely word culture. Every army is blaming, this is the culture of the army. It's a culture of men's mentality. It's a culture. It's like the word banter and culture. So therefore, we are never going to change it. But the thing is, it can be changed, and it must be changed. And the only way to change it is through education. And thankfully, need to change through education and thousands of years. So from the Spartans, I would say, from the Roman Empire, the Romans, any army, the Vikings, they all have their culture, the macho culture, and macho culture, unfortunately, is needed by the men in a war zone, but not in an office environment. I mean, with the Women of Honour have included gender discrimination for promotion, but my ethos of the Women of Honour initially was to highlight the fact that their fellow colleagues are sexually harassing, assaulting, and raping your fellow colleagues. The organisation where your fellow colleagues rape you away with it. So that is the culture that needs to be re-educated and changed. Whereas in every organisation, gender discrimination happens for promotion, but you don't get assaulted or raped by your colleagues in any other organisation. So that's time.
No, absolutely. Karina, we're coming up to about an hour and a half, so I think we'll wrap up soon. So is there anything else that you wanted to sort of talk about in terms of your career, or what you want to see happening now, or you think we've covered it?
That if anyone is listening, to not be afraid to go and join, let it be the Irish Army or the British Army. As I say, laws have been changed now in both, and the situation is a lot better, and the chain of command has been removed in the Irish Defence Forces. And if, God forbid, you were assaulted or raped in the Irish Defence Forces, now you are allowed to go directly to our police, which are called guards, and get your fair hearing. And as I say, it is changing slowly, but the laws have been put in place now to protect men and women now, which is great. So yeah, so if that's your dream to join the military, then yeah, make a stab at it, as you say, but know you're right.
Aye, no, fair play. And I think,
and you will be protected, hopefully.
I don't know if it was the Irish Army or somewhere else, but I think a lot of organisations are doing, like, you can report to, it'll be like a third sector, a third party. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who's involved with that organisation, and they can help you out as well.
Yes, you can go outside the organisation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is good. Initially, when we were there, you couldn't go outside the organisation, but now you can, which is great.
Aye, no, absolutely. Well, Karina, I really, as I say, as we started, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I would recommend as well, if people, are interested in this, they could check out your book as well. I'm Women in Defence. It's available on Amazon, etc. So yeah, thanks very much for doing this.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Thank you.
Not any worries. Let's stay in touch, and I'll speak to you again, Karina.
Okay, all right. Best of luck in your podcast. Thanks, Paul.
Right, appreciate that. Thank you. Bye.